Before we dive into today's story, if this is your first time watching one of our videos, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button. Your support means the world to us and helps us bring you even more powerful stories. Stick with us till the very end. And if this story moves you, share your thoughts in the comments and send it to a friend who needs to hear it. Now, let's begin. The notification came at exactly 2:47 p.m. on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. Amelia Grant was standing behind the counter at Westfield Pharmacy, carefully explaining the correct dosage of blood pressure pills to Mr. Walters, one of her elderly customers. Her voice was calm, professional, but inside her chest, her heart was racing as her phone buzzed with an alert. She thought it would be another discount email or maybe a reminder from her bank, but when she looked down, the words froze her blood. Withdrawal of $2,340,000 successfully processed. For a second, Amelia could not breathe. The room seemed to tilt sideways, the shelves of medicine blurring around her. Mr. Walters' lips moved as he asked her something about side effects, but his words felt muffled, as though they came from under deep water. Amelia gripped the counter, blinking hard, praying it was some kind of mistake. Her hands trembled so violently that she dropped the prescription bag, pills scattering across the counter. She didn't even apologize. She simply muttered, I'm sorry, I have to go," and bolted out of the pharmacy, her heart pounding so loudly she could barely hear the city noise outside. 10 years. 10 years of sacrifice. 10 years of denying herself the simplest joys, all swept away in a single afternoon. And she already knew who had done it. The bus ride home felt like a nightmare Amelia could not wake from. She sat stiff in her seat, clutching her phone, refreshing her banking app every 30 seconds as if the numbers would magically reappear. But the screen kept flashing the same cruel message. Balance $0. Gone. Everything. She pressed her forehead against the cold window, watching the streets crawl by in slow motion. Mothers with strollers, school kids laughing, delivery men rushing with parcels. All of them living their ordinary lives while Amelia's was collapsing. She whispered to herself, "Please let it be an error, just some glitch in the system." But deep inside, she knew better. She knew exactly whose fingerprints were all over this betrayal. Her parents, Gerald and Margaret Grant. They had been circling her money like vultures for years, hiding their greed behind the mask of parental concern. They always spoke of family contributions, of helping each other, but Amelia had learned long ago that what they really meant was her helping them and her younger sister, Claudia. She clenched her fists. "Not this time," she whispered. "Not without a fight." When Amelia burst through the front door of her parents' suburban house 40 minutes later, she found Gerald and Margaret sitting in the living room as though nothing extraordinary had happened. Gerald sat in his armchair with the newspaper folded neatly in his hands, his silver reading glasses perched low on his nose. Margaret lounged on the couch, scrolling through her phone, her perfectly manicured nails clicking the screen. The smell of freshly brewed coffee lingered in the air, mingling with the sound of a clock ticking on the wall. "Where's my money?" Amelia's voice cracked, though she tried to keep it steady. Gerald slowly folded the newspaper, each deliberate movement echoing in the silence like a taunt. He leaned back and let out a laugh, not warm, not amused, but sharp, cold, and triumphant. "Thank you for your naivety, Amelia," he said, his eyes never leaving the newspaper. "Your savings will now guarantee Claudia's bright future. You should be proud." Margaret finally looked up, her lips curling into a smile that lacked even the faintest trace of maternal warmth. "You? With millions? You'd have wasted it anyway. At least this way it goes to someone who deserves it." For a moment, Amelia stood frozen. The rage that boiled inside her was so intense she thought her body might shake apart. And then, unexpectedly, she began to laugh. At first it was soft, a strange chuckle escaping her lips. But soon it grew into a wild, uncontrollable laughter that filled the room, startling her parents. Gerald frowned, lowering his paper. Margaret tilted her head, frowning. "Have you lost your mind?" she demanded. Amelia wiped a tear from her eye and looked them both dead in the face. "Did you take the money from the wrong account?" she asked between fits of laughter. Gerald's smug expression faltered. His face turned pale, the color draining like water from a sponge. Margaret's phone slipped from her hands and clattered to the hardwood floor. "What are you talking about?" Gerald snapped, his voice unsteady now. Amelia leaned against the wall, still laughing, and whispered, "That account you just emptied, it was bait. A trap I set years ago, waiting for this exact moment." Her parents exchanged nervous glances, and for the first time, Amelia saw fear in their eyes. Sweet, delicious fear. "Let me take you back," Amelia said, her laughter fading into a deadly calm. 10 years ago, when all of this began. She didn't wait for them to answer. She needed them to hear it, every detail, every scar carved into her life by their greed. She was only 20 when she landed her first job at Morrison's pharmacy. It wasn't much, just $850 a month, but it was hers. She remembered the pride of holding that first paycheck, believing she was finally standing on her own feet. But Gerald and Margaret had other plans. They introduced what they smugly called the family contribution system. 80% of her salary was demanded as her share of household costs. That left Amelia with barely $170 for food, transportation, clothes, and the faintest hope of a social life. Meanwhile, Claudia, their golden child, had everything handed to her: private tutors, a car for her 16th birthday, designer clothes Margaret bragged about on social media. Amelia was forced into the shadows, a servant in her own home, living on crumbs while her sister was treated like royalty. But even then, Amelia began to form a plan that would one day turn her parents' greed into their downfall. Amelia remembered those early mornings at 20 years old, when she would wake up at 5 a.m. in the tiny bedroom she shared with boxes of Claudia's and used clothes. She would drag herself out of bed, dress in the same 2 uniforms she owned, and take 2 buses across the city to Morrison's pharmacy. Her feet ached from standing all day, and at night she returned home exhausted, only to hand over nearly all her paycheck to Gerald and Margaret. "It's for the good of the family," Gerald would always say, his voice dripping with self-righteousness. Margaret would add, "Think of it as training for responsibility." Yet while Amelia skipped meals to make her bus fare stretch, Claudia posted pictures from pool parties, shopping sprees, and spring break trips her parents fully funded. The injustice stung every single day, and so Amelia quietly found a second job, lying that she was working overtime at the pharmacy, when in fact she was waiting tables at Romano's restaurant on weekends. She served food with a smile, even when her body screamed with exhaustion. But she had a secret. Every single tip, every single paycheck from Romano's went into a hidden account. It wasn't much at first, just $500 a month. But it was the first brick in a fortress she planned to build around herself. For 5 long years, Amelia lived like a ghost in her own life. She wore the same worn-out shoes until the soles cracked. She packed her lunches, sandwiches, and apples every single day while Margaret and Claudia dined in expensive restaurants. She refused movie nights, dates, or new clothes, telling people she was too busy, when the truth was she couldn't spare a cent. Friends drifted away, but Amelia didn't mind. She had a vision. She whispered to herself at night, "One day I'll walk into my own home. My name will be on the deed. No one will take it from me." When she turned 25, her sacrifices finally bore fruit. She was promoted to assistant manager at Morrison's, and her salary jumped to $4,500 a month. Gerald and Margaret wasted no time. "Since you're earning more," Gerald declared smugly, "your family contribution will now be $3,600. Amelia smiled tightly, handing over what they demanded. But what they didn't know was that she had begun freelancing as a bookkeeper for small businesses. That side hustle earned her another $3,000 a month, every penny of which went straight into her hidden account. By then, Amelia was secretly saving more than $3,000 every month, while pretending to live on scraps. Her parents thought they had her cornered, but Amelia was already building her escape. At 27, Amelia stumbled on the truth that confirmed every suspicion she had harbored. She was helping Margaret organize some tax documents when she found a folder hidden under a stack of old bills. Inside were copies of all her personal banking information, statements from accounts she thought were private, even her social security card and birth certificate. Her blood turned to ice. They had been monitoring her finances for years, treating her life like a bank they owned. Later, her Aunt Cecilia let the secret slip during a family dinner after too much wine. "You know they're saving your money for Claudia's medical school, right?" Cecilia had said casually, spearing a piece of chicken with her fork. Amelia froze. "What did you just say?" she asked, her voice sharp. Cecilia shrugged. "It's not a big deal. Gerald and Margaret said you wouldn't mind. Claudia needs it more. 6 years of private medical school isn't cheap." The number hit Amelia like a slap. Nearly $1.8 million was what they were planning to steal. She sat through the rest of the dinner in silence, her smile frozen in place, her stomach churning. That night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her heart pounding. She could have confronted them right then. She could have switched banks, locked her money down. But she didn't. She had a better idea, a smarter, colder idea. If they wanted to steal from her, she would give them something to steal. Amelia opened a third account with an online-only bank, registered under her friend Nina's address. Her real savings were funneled there, untouchable and invisible to anyone snooping. Meanwhile, she began what she later called her shell game. Over the next 2 years, she created a carefully constructed illusion in the account her parents monitored. Using pre-approved credit lines, temporary transfers, and meticulous shuffling, she made the balance appear to hold exactly the amount her parents believed she had. $1.8 million, the perfect sum for Claudia's tuition. She left fake bank statements conveniently where Margaret could accidentally find them, mentioned her growing savings in casual conversation, and smiled when Gerald praised her discipline. Every move was deliberate. Every number they saw was a lie she had planted. Her real fortune, over $2.3 million by then, was invested safely where they could never touch it. She told herself daily, they will take the bait, and when they do, it will destroy them. She was patient, disciplined, waiting for the exact right moment. And she knew it would come around her 30th birthday, when Claudia's final tuition bill was due. So when Amelia stood before her parents on that Tuesday afternoon, laughing as they gloated over stealing what they thought was her fortune, she was not broken. She was triumphant. "That account was a trap," she repeated, her voice steady now like steel. Gerald's face drained of color. Margaret's hands shook as she bent to pick up her shattered phone. "You're lying," Gerald said, though his voice lacked conviction. Amelia pulled her own phone from her pocket, swiping quickly. "Do you know what forgery, identity theft, and grand larceny have in common?" she asked coldly. "They're all felonies, and you committed all of them today. The bank's security cameras caught everything." She held up the police report she had filed online during her lunch break. "You have until noon tomorrow to return every penny, or I hand this over to the DA." Margaret's eyes filled with tears, mascara streaking down her cheeks. "You can't do this to your own family. We only wanted what's best for Claudia." Amelia's laugh was sharp, cutting. "And when did you ever think about what was best for me?" The sound of keys jingling cut through the air. Claudia walked into the room, her heels clicking on the hardwood, swinging the keys to her brand-new BMW. Her face was glowing with pride. "Guess what, Amelia? Mom and Dad surprised me today. Finally, my dream car." She froze when she saw her sister's expression. then glanced at her parents, who were pale and silent. "What's going on?" Claudia demanded, frowning. Amelia stared at her sister for a long moment, then said, "Do you know what paid for that car?" "My stolen money." Claudia's eyes widened, then narrowed in indignation. "You're being ridiculous. You've always been jealous of me. You just can't stand to see me happy." That was the final straw. Amelia felt something inside her snap. She dialed a number and held the phone to her ear. "Peter," she said calmly when her lawyer answered. "It's time. File the complaint." Her parents gasped, Gerald reaching forward as if to snatch the phone away. Amelia didn't flinch. She let them hear every word as her lawyer confirmed that the documents were ready. All they needed was her go-ahead. She gave it, her voice firm. "Do it." The next morning, at exactly 11:47 a.m., Amelia's phone rang. Gerald's voice trembled so badly she could barely understand him. "The money's back," he whispered. "Check your account." Amelia did. The bank account now showed the full $1.8 million returned. But she wasn't satisfied. She knew this wasn't about money anymore. It was about justice. 2 hours later, Detective Marcus Rivera and his partner knocked on the Grants' front door with a warrant in hand. Neighbors peeked through curtains as Gerald and Margaret were led out in handcuffs, their heads bowed, faces ashen. Claudia screamed, begging them to stop, but no one listened. The BMW was repossessed days later when the dealership discovered it had been purchased with stolen funds. Gerald and Margaret were forced to liquidate their retirement accounts and sell their vacation home to pay for lawyers. Their names splashed across the local paper. Local couple arrested for stealing daughter's life savings. The friends who once praised them turned away in shame. Claudia's medical school rescinded her admission. Their perfect little world collapsed in a single week, just as Amelia had planned. Amelia didn't stop there. She bought her dream house in cash, a beautiful 3-bedroom colonial with white shutters and a wraparound porch. 15 minutes from her parents' neighborhood, but a lifetime away from their influence. She moved in with nothing but her clothes, refusing to take a single object tied to that toxic home. Her phone numbers changed, her email blocked. Gerald and Margaret tried to call, text, beg through relatives, even plead on voicemail. "We're sorry. Family should forgive," they said. Amelia never answered. 3 months later, she woke each morning in her own home, the sun spilling across hardwood floors she owned outright. She breathed peace for the first time in her life. Her real fortune, $2.3 million she had earned through her own sweat, was intact, invested, growing. And the $1.8 million her parents returned? She donated it to a scholarship fund for low-income students, making sure it would never be used for Claudia's ambitions. Sometimes people asked if she regretted being so ruthless. Amelia always gave the same answer. 10 years I was their personal bank. Now I'm the owner of my own life. And sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, it's getting ahead. Months after the arrests and the move, Amelia found herself walking through the quiet streets of her new neighborhood one crisp autumn morning, a cup of coffee warming her hands. The leaves crunched under her boots, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself to smile without bitterness pressing at the edges. She had expected guilt to haunt her after cutting off her family so completely. She had expected lonely nights, the kind where she might question if she had been too merciless. But instead, she felt light, as though a heavy chain had finally fallen away. At the supermarket, the cashier greeted her by name. At the library, she chatted with neighbors who admired her courage to start over alone. She was no longer Amelia the daughter, Amelia the ATM, Amelia the invisible one. She was simply Amelia Grant, homeowner, independent woman, and survivor. Sometimes, when she passed the scholarship office downtown, she saw students clutching acceptance letters funded by the money her parents had been forced to return. She thought about how those young people, many from families like hers who had never been given a chance, would now walk paths she once dreamed of. And in those moments, She understood the full weight of her choices. Revenge had not destroyed her, it had rebuilt her. Gerald and Margaret were drowning in debt, stripped of their reputation, while Claudia worked long shifts at a retail store. Her dreams of becoming a doctor evaporated. Amelia didn't hate them anymore. She simply stopped caring. That was the true victory. "Freedom!" she whispered one evening as she locked her front door, her home safe and quiet around her. "This is what I was fighting for all along." And with that, Amelia stepped into a life of her own making, leaving behind the shadows of betrayal forever. Like and subscribe to my channel for more contents like this, and let us know where you are watching from under the comments section.